sharing it with your spouse. The things that you think may be important, they may not. And that's good. Let the heads ball.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
Hey, pilot, welcome to Ready for Pushback. I'm Nick Fialka, and I am so glad you are here today. I'm back with Tim Pope, the certified financial planner who focuses completely on airline pilots. That's his main focus. He's an awesome guy. And our conversation today is all about your finances, your budgeting, how to manage as you are on your journey, whether you're starting out or whether you're already at a major airline and at your dream job. Tim and I unpack a lot of this today. Always valuable content, always a really fun conversation. So sit back, relax. Let's get ready for Pushback. And last but not least, let's have a quick word from our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't have this awesome podcast. Hey, pilot. Did you just get a new conditional job offer? Are you getting out of the military and going to move your family across the country? Are you going to move in base somewhere? Or are you going to go out to find that second home that you've been looking for? Well, I want you to stop right now, pick up the phone, and call Marty and the team at Trident Home Loans. It's an organization that's run by pilots. They understand pilot pay. They understand contracts. They understand military. They have the best VA loans in the United States. Marty and his team have been doing mortgages for years. They've been doing my mortgages for years. I trust him and his team more than any other organization. I challenge you to get a better deal anywhere else. Go ahead, reach out, get a mortgage quote, and then call Marty and his team. They will walk you through the process and show you how competitive their rates are. So go right now, tridenthomeloans.com, and check them out. Hey, pilot. I want to tell you about a great friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. He's a financial planner, and he's completely focused on the professional pilot. He's the kind of guy you want to go to for real talk to help you figure out your financial future. With so many upgrades and so many transitions and so many things going on, you owe it to yourself to give him a call. He'll help you design and execute really smart financial planning strategies, whether it's retirement planning, investment management, military transition, tax planning. He's a great financial planning partner. Timothy P. Pope, CFP, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. Give him a shout. All the information's in the show notes. You should definitely tell him I told you to call. All right, Timothy P. Pope is back, ladies and gentlemen, our favorite financial planner. What's up, man? How are you?
Nick, long time no see, man. Good to be here.
I know. It's long time no see, but we talk to each other all the time. So it makes it a little, for everybody else at home, they don't get to hear our conversations. So here we are. We are at the end of 2023. We are beginning 2024. We've had a lot of changes in the airline industry in just 12 short months. And I'm interested what your take is, because there's a lot moving around. There's a lot going on. So what are you seeing right now in this industry?
Well, it continues to be a great time to be a professional pilot, particularly on the passenger side. We saw some interesting things come out of the cargo space a little while ago with UPS offering the early retirements, and then FedEx telling its pilots that, hey, maybe you want to think about flying for PSA, right? So we've talked to our pilots about how they felt about that, and that was interesting.
Have you had anybody from FedEx be like, hey, look, I'm going to PSA?
I had one say they may think about it.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And it was like, well, if the new contract says I could, or if they give us an LOA that says I could have my same seniority if I found my way back over time.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I see. All right, so here we are moving around. Sorry to interrupt. 2024 is fast approaching. Where do we stand?
Yeah, I think it's important as we get to the end of one chapter, right? It's just a natural time of reflection, and it's the beginning of another. And I do this personally myself. At the end of each year, you just kind of think about what goals did I have coming into the year? Which ones did I just smash out of the park, right? And I meet, and then which ones are going to flow with me into the next year because perhaps I didn't accomplish them. And I'd like to think, or I'd like to talk about financially, like what folks can be thinking about as they move towards 2024. So one of them is just doing that exact thing that I just mentioned is give yourself an honest look. As you came into 2023, which financial goals that you had, which ones did you accomplish? And then which ones that need more work. And it could be something simple like, you know what, this year I was going to budget better, or I was going to save more, or in 2023, my plan was to reduce my consumer debt by 50%. So things like that. Like, did I accomplish it or did I not? And I think starting there is going to inform which goals you start to create for yourself and for your family in 2024. So that's number one.
You think that they should write this down, right? Take a holistic look with, if they have a significant other, whoever, and sit down and jot it down. Should they keep a kind of a financial hopes and dreams journal throughout the year?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love how you bring in, hey, if you got a spouse, if you got somebody else, right, that you share the finances with, the more that both of you are involved, typically the greater success, right? And then when you write things down, the research says that we're 30% plus higher to reach our goals when we write it down. That's what a financial plan is, by the way, is your goals written down. But there is something about you writing it down with your own pen and paper. And then to your point about sharing it with your spouse, having that session, the things that you think may be important, they may not. And that's good. Let the heads bump, right? And then you guys together figure out like what you're going to prioritize. That's something we do in some of our meetings when we have two spouses coming on in the beginning. We will ask them to list out their goals and then prioritize them in order of what we should be working on first. And it's nice to just see that process work.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. It's funny that we're doing this today because this is also the day that my wife and I are sitting down and talking about budget stuff because our lives have been in flux for quite a while, and now it's time to I would say we are officially settled, and we've gone through all the machinations of life, and so we are hoping to create that structure with our budget and get things wrangled in and back under control, especially if you think about, we've got a bunch of different buckets of people that listen. You've got those pilots that are doing flight school that have the world as their oyster, and they've got so many awesome things ahead of them. And getting a solid financial plan today has exponential benefit at the end of a career, at the end of a 40 plus year career. You've got the regional bucket that's working their way up. And right now they're making good money, but they probably are getting 4 or 6% as a match in their 401k. And if those LOAs, those letters of agreement go away, the pay can come back down. And all of a sudden you're struggling just to make ends meet. And then you've got the majors, and you could be at 15% guaranteed for a 401k for like not a match, like a 15% or up to like 21%. And a lot of that is very flexible. And so you could be in a lot of different phases, and knowing where you are and where you hope to be and where you want to grow to, like, yeah, you need a next year plan. I think you also need a when we get there plan. Where do we go?
Yeah. Well, a couple things on the 401k match. A lot of the majors will be moving up to 18% by the end of 2026. So a lot of times they're 16% now, moving to 17 next year, then 18 the end of 2026 or in 2026. That's a lot of money that is not coming out of your pocket, going into towards your savings. And then something that you mentioned, even for the folks that are, say, flight school or regional, right? I like to tell pilots, right? First of all, our practice does not believe in deferring until I'm dead. So financial planning is, we're going to talk about your retirement plan, but you guys make enough money to be able to set your future self up securely and to figure out how to enjoy the fruits of your labors right now. And I think that may be a misconception. A lot of people just, it's all about the future. I've got to save, and I'm not going to enjoy anything. It's actually really liberating when you sit down and you figure out what your budget is. You figure out, hey, if I'm automating my savings, then my free cash flow, I can do whatever I want with that without that guilty feeling or without questioning, like, am I doing enough? Am I saving enough? Am I robbing my future self? Am I going to regret that? Right. So when you put it on paper, you have your eyes wide open. It's fairly liberating.
Yeah. And if you're in the space right now where you're like, man, I have no money, that's probably the best time to start and to jump in there and start, even if it's, $50 a month or whatever that you automate, you can. I remember when I was in college, I automated $50 a month to go into some kind of plan. I still have it going, but I've put more and more into it. The finances get a little bit more complex as you get older, and that's why you need a solid financial planner to help manage it and have Tim there at your side. But also, like, starting those habits when you have nothing makes it not even hurt as you gain more wealth. And that is so important.
That's right. That's right. I think that, to your point, what you just talked about is the two tips that I have moving into 2024, right? If there's just two things that you do, one is to track your cash, okay? Like if you, in 2023, said, hey, I want to be more intentional with my expenses, with my savings, and I want to understand and know where my money is going, but you haven't done it yet, go into 2024 and make that happen. Track your cash. Use, budgeting apps. You can use Excel, whatever. We help our clients do it with our financial planning software, right? So track your cash is number one because it's so informative. And then number two, to the point that you made just now, is automate your savings, even if it's a small amount, right? Because that builds that saving and investing muscle. And the dividends are huge over time. So when we think about the 401k, right, next year, the limits are going to be $23,000 that you can save if you're under the age of 50. Okay. Add an extra $7,500 if you're 50 or older. The IRA and Roth IRA limits are going to be $7,000 a piece. Well, $7,000. You can't put $7,000 in an IRA. And the IRA and the Roth limits for 2024 are going to be $7,000, right? So if you're under 50, you can put $7,000 in your Roth. If you're 50 or older, you can add another $1,000 there. And so then the HSA account, right? So for healthcare savings, that's also gotten a boost up to $8,300 for married filing jointly or for families. So if you just automate that, even if you're not hitting those limits, but if you automate some of that, that's going to be a powerful change for you.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, if Tim's saying some stuff that just, you're like, what in the world? That means you need to call. It just means you pick up the phone, set up an appointment, and sit down with him. And, I'm not a smart person. I'm not great at very much. And I would say a lot of pilots have that kind of uncertainty in their life, that little bit of trepidation and fear. And I would say, even when it comes to the basics, right? You and I, before the show, were talking about budgeting and how basic that you're doing like calculus while everybody over here is doing addition. And so I think that it's important to, like, Tim, even if you need help wrangling it in and figuring out where your money is going, Tim is the guy to call. Like, he will sit down with you, like, he's a patient man and understands it. And I think of that and how important that first move, it's just the first chess move that you make. And as you get to become a chess master, like, that's why you have an advisor, somebody that's on your team to help you move through that.
Yeah. And as I was saying before, like, a lot of times with our clients, when we do the budget exercise, it's informative. We always get to a part where we call the leaky bucket. And so we've got all the hug money, the housing, utilities, groceries, the savings all down. And then we say, hey, here's what we call the leaky bucket. This says you should have X left over. And almost undoubtedly, it's like, that number seems a little too high. Like, we don't have that over.
Mine goes to the Mexican restaurant down the street in Amazon. Like, that's my bucket.
Right. So, or to your point, if somebody's earlier on starting out their career, it may not be the leaky bucket, but it could be discovering areas that you could shift towards savings or just building the emergency fund. Maybe they've not even got to the investment side yet, but just building that just so if things change in the industry, you've got yourself a cushion. You got something to fall back on.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think that there are so many changes that are happening, right? We've got new contracts. Next year, hopefully we'll have a new contract with Southwest. And there's a couple other holdouts. I know we're fingers crossed for Southwest. God bless them. They've had a long, hard road. But also, you've got people that are getting retro pay, and there are people that are upgrading, like yours truly. And it's also interesting that it's not always the money you expect it to be, because you go from all of a sudden you might be moving up the seniority list quickly as a first officer, and then you jump over to the captain side, and all of a sudden that slows down, and the money that you were making as a first officer becomes less obtainable because you can't pick up extra flying and stuff like that as easy. And that's really interesting. What has been your experience with clients that are going down those roads?
Well, I think that you bring up a good point, because there's a lot of movement in the things that you said, the retro pay, changing seats, or changing equipment, right? All of those have a financial impact. And as we're talking about thinking forward to 2024, these have some tangible changes. So let's think about the retro pay. The biggest thing that may have done for you is push your taxable income up and push you up in a different bracket. But it could have, for some of our clients, right, who have automated their savings and maybe contribute to a Roth IRA at the beginning of the year, right? Now we get to the end of the year, we've had some contracts signed, we had some retro pay paid out. And it's like, you know what, that Roth IRA contribution that you made in the beginning of the year, you are no longer eligible for that. We're going to have to unwind that, because that's going to be considered an excess contribution because your income is now too high.
Snap.
So, and it's not the end of the world. There's ways you can fix it, but the thing is, you have to fix it. It needs to be fixed, and you need to be working with somebody who can identify that. That's happened for some of our clients a couple times this year. Same thing. And so that with retro pay, same thing for upgrading or changing seat or changing equipment. Right. So, hey, I was an FO doing domestic. Now I'm doing a 777 and I'm doing international. So I'm getting more pay. I think to your point, like with the captain upgrade, is a lot of times folks will just set and forget their Roth contribution to the 401k or the pre-tax contribution. Typically when you're upgrading, so double whammy this year, you got new contracts, which means new pay rates. And then you've upgraded on top of that. Right. And so you're getting two raises in one. And if you can fly, then you might rethink or just recheck your allocation. And does it still make sense to just do Roth on everything? Right? Have I reached a point where now I need to relook at that? Or should I add some traditional in there? Or should I do traditional but then do a mega backdoor Roth and regular Roth contribution, still get some tax-free growth? And so those are some things that I would think about if I got a new contract and I upgraded as well.
So what I'm hearing is that the people that are chess masters still need to keep their eye on the board, and they need to focus and have that conversation with you. And the people that are just starting out, that are moving their first pawn on their first move, that is your most advantageous time to set your career on a playing field that can soar. And because I'll tell you what, it goes before you know it. And the clock keeps moving and things happen. And so it's worthwhile to focus and make the choices today that can affect your future. And it's going to be millions of dollars over the span of a career. And if you just blow through millions of dollars, man, it's regretful at the end. So I think that the focus of the 2024 year should be getting your finances straight, getting yourself focused, getting yourself ready for the future this year. So that's what I see, Tim. I think this is like the sun is coming up, and it's time to really reap what you sow.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned before, is you can do both. You can set your future self up for success. You can enjoy the fruits of your labor. And we find the clients who are able to do both and feel good about doing both are intentional. They're not shooting from the hip, right? A lot of times shooting at the hip leads to regret. Either I'm oversaving and I'm just deferring everything and I'm not enjoying it. And then you feel like you are serving your investment and your saving plan as opposed to it serving you, right? So that's on the one hand, or we're shooting from the hip and we're spending everything we make, and all the future, it'll work itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You're not going to die because you don't have any money, but will you enjoy yourself?
Yeah. Will you enjoy yourself? That's a really, really good point. And that's what it's about is when you are intentional, just like interviewing. If you're going to look for a job, if you're listening to this show because you hear my conversations and give life advice, I tell people you need to be intentional. You need to write your stuff down. You need to be real about what it is. And I say it day in and day out. And now we're talking about your money, which is probably one of the more important things in your life. And so if you are not intentional, you are foolish. And so be intentional, be that or gal, and be awesome. Tim, dude, I love talking to you, man. I really appreciate it. I'm excited. Heads up, January. Stick around in January. I will be releasing some fun news with Tim. He's got a cool thing coming up.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. We are excited. I mean, as we stand now, it's like the clock is ticking down. We're super excited for this announcement that our practice has. Our clients are excited about it, and we appreciate you announcing it to your audience as well.
Man, we're going to blow it up. It's going to be super awesome. Anyway, stay tuned, y'all. Tim, thank you for everything. Thank you for what you do for the pilot group. We really appreciate you. Timothy P. Pope, he's got all the information in the show notes. When you call him, tell him you heard it on the show because every time we talk, he's like, I got a couple more awesome people calling me from the show. I said, man, that's awesome. Let's go. So Tim, thanks for your time, man. You're the best.
You got it, Nick. Thank you.
Oh yeah, before we go, I've got to do one more thing, which Tim made me promise that I would do to keep us all out of hot water, which is this disclosure. So are you ready? Let's see if I can read it on the first take. Timothy P. Pope, CFP, is a financial advisor offering securities and insurance products offered through Cetera Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC. Registered office address 5277 Center Drive, Suite 330, Charlotte, North Carolina 28217. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult a tax or legal advisor. Neither Cetera Investment Services nor any of its representatives may give legal or tax advice. Hey, before you jump out of here and go on to the next podcast, can I ask a big favor? Would you mind going over to your app that you're listening to this podcast on and give me a review? Give me a 5-star review if you love it. Give me a 1-star review if it totally sucks. Put a comment in there, something that is helpful. It helps me. It helps get the word out there. It helps people find the podcast, and that's super cool. If you don't do that, maybe you could just share the podcast with a friend. Tell a buddy who's trying to figure it out, trying to sort out this pilot dream of theirs and get a little bit further. That is super awesome as well. Last, if you don't do either of those two things, how about this? Find a way today to make yourself 1% better. Do that thing that you've been putting off. Put your foot forward, make movement, get yourself going, get that inertia that you need to succeed in this industry. So that's your choice. Leave a review, tell a friend, or make yourself better. Either way, it's all a good choice. And I'm super stoked you're listening, and I will see you on the next episode. The statements made on this show are my own opinions and do not reflect, nor are they under any direction from my employer.